Hello everybody. Welcome to another exciting edition of my Whenever I Feel Like It vlog. Now the topic of today's video is school. Now, I was a late starter because I was, late starter isn't the appropriate, isn't the right way to describe it. I was born in August, and August kids, sometimes they wait until the next year. It just, depends on the day. I was born just before the cut-off point, so if I'd been born any later, I would have waited until the next year and been one of the oldest people in the year. But I started in the year earlier, and as a result, I was one of the youngest people in the year. Actually, I still remember my first day. The excitement, putting on my uniform and having a little satchel bag with the school's logo on it that they gave us. And then my parents, taking photos of me and all of that. Little did I know how horrible school would turn out to be. Stuff was fine at my first school. There were bullies, but it wasn't, that bad really. And I had friends. I was reasonably popular. Spent 3 years at that school. I remember I got bumped up to the upper level of the school's reading section because when they assessed me, they found that I had the reading level of an average 20-year-old. Should have been a hint at me being autistic, because that's one of the common traits. And I woke. The school was alright. They were all female teachers. The only male member of staff was the caretaker, and we didn't really talk to him much. We just knew as Mr. Brown, and we saw him every once in a while. Her teacher was a real dragon, though. Her name was Mrs. Rimmer. She was very strict. She was the kind that could scare the pants off you. Always did terrible at sports day. Pretty much came last or second to last in the running races and. Was never very, never very good at sport. I've always struggled in maths as well. Something else that I never really got to grips with. I remember in year 3 when we were going through our times tables, there was, we used to go up in stages, and there was a list on the wall where people would put their name, where people's name tags would go depending on if you say you've done your 1 times table, your 2 times table, your 3 times table, and once you'd finished it, then you'd move it up to the next one until you got to the top. I don't think I got past 6. People were finishing, and some had finished. The majority of them were like 12, and I was still struggling at the level 5 and whatnot. And eventually they just gave up and said, "All right, you don't have to do it anymore." I was kind of proud of myself at the time for being so bad at maths that they let me stop doing it. Essentially. It's primary school. That was where things started to go downhill. Meeting new people, and a lot of them I knew from before, but there were some that that were completely new and I'd never met. My popularity kind of went downhill fairly quickly, and I established myself as one of those kids, the weird ones that nobody really likes, and get bullied all the time and what have you. We had some good teachers though, and that was also when my autistic traits were first noticed. When I was in year 6, like I said, my teacher then had done child psychology at university, and she recognised in me the traits of Asperger's, and she talked to my parents about it, and I had various assessments and stuff, but like I said, it was decided that I wasn't serious enough to warrant diagnosis and whatnot. Damn spider webs. Go on, bugger off. There we go. I remember becoming a litter monitor at primary school. Had a tiny little green shield badge and went around picking up litter and putting it in bags and putting it in the big bins. First taste of responsibility. Didn't make it to prefect though. There was also something that happened with regards to my maths. I remember when to start with, we were in, we were taught by our class teachers. No, hang on, no. We were sent to a particular teacher. I remember we were with Mrs. Carter, and then eventually we were doing what was called streamed. And you were sorted into classes based on your ability. So, the people in the higher level classes got higher level maths, and the people in the lower level classes got easier maths and more help, and so on. And I was due to be put into Mr. Tinsley's class one year, but then Mrs. Carter came into the classroom just as, that was all being read out, and she said, actually, I'd like Chris to stay in my class. Now, I'm not sure why. Perhaps Miss Newson had, shared with her beliefs about me being on the spectrum, and Mrs. Carter took it upon herself to keep me in her class probably because it was the lowest level class. And again, we had another one of those things where they were leaderboards for something, but they used football leagues, the Vauxhall Conference, and Division 1, Division 2, Division 3, the Premiership at the top, and I never got out of the Vauxhall Conference. it was like, you have to, do various tests, and if you got beyond a certain score, you could move up into the next league, and it kind of didn't ever happen for me. I mean, I was towards the top of the Vauxhall Conference, but, yeah, it was terrible, really. Also that school, that was when when the bullying started to get worse. People started to get more physical, and it was all the name calling and the exclusionary tactics and stuff. So yeah, it wasn't a great experience. I was there for year 4, year 5, year 6. I was there for 3 years. Originally, there was a 7th year. That's what would have been a 4th year, but it was the 7th. It was year 7. But the year before I went into year 6. The year 6s were sent up to the secondary school along with the year 7. So instead of finishing year 6, going on holiday and then coming back to start year 7, they just went straight on to secondary school. And year 6 became the final year of primary school. And another thing that I remember there, it was noticed by my teachers that I was often excluded by the other pupils, and I was bullied and whatnot. So they had this woman come in. I think she was a child psychologist, and they sort of had this group sessions, where you get a lot of people together, and with me as the focus of the group, and we do activities and talk and whatnot. I didn't really get the point of it, and I still don't understand the point of it because it was never explained to me. It's possible that they were just trying to get me to interact with the other pupils and possibly make friendships with them, but at the end of the day, the people that they put in the group weren't people that I particularly liked anyway. I mean, I didn't hate them, but I was just neutral towards most of them, and I only had one good friend at that school, and we remained friends up at, in secondary school. But as time went on, I was always pretty much the richest kid in school. I had multiple consoles, multiple televisions, and anyone in the house, at least, not multiple televisions in my bedroom at that time. I always had, the latest movie releases on video, and, but eventually, we got a PlayStation 2 and started getting DVDs and stuff. So, my mother thought that he was using me. He was only friends with me because I had stuff that he couldn't afford. And, when it's with friends. This is odd. There's a lot of cars, so. There was a guy in an AA van who's pulled up, and he's talking to this other car that's just pulled up, so I'm not sure why they're there. Anyway, when we got into secondary school, there were situations where he was with his friends, and he would pick on me with his friends, and then once it was just us two alone, or we were with our little group of friends. There was me, him, and two other guys. Everything was fine, but looking back on it, I do think that he was probably not as genuine as I believed at the time. Thinking about it, we had a lot of fun together, going over each other's houses and having sleepovers and stuff, but he could be a shit sometimes, just really mean things at my expense, to impress his friends and whatnot. Anyway, to move on from that, whenever I started a new school, I always got this particular feeling. It was this strange sort of fuzzy. Well, fuzzy is the. I don't really know how to explain it. It's a similar feeling to what someone else I know has referred to as the intangible game feeling. The feeling that you get when you play a game that, with things that are entirely new to you, but you really, really enjoy. That you're experiencing them for the first time in a game, and you're thinking, wow, I've wanted stuff like this in games before, but not even known that I've wanted it. The last game that I remember that gave me the intangible game feeling was The Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, when we first got an Xbox 360, being able to outfit your character in whatever equipment that you chose, being able to purchase homes and kit out your homes and stuff, and that gave me this sort of warm, fuzzy feeling inside that was similar but different to the feeling that I got when I started a new school. The feeling I got when I started a new school was more like, apprehension and confusion, but also, interest and curiosity. So that feeling was most apparent when I was at secondary school, because that was the biggest change. It was, we had multiple buildings. We were starting to do subjects that I'd never done before. And doing proper science rather than just reading stuff in textbooks, experiments with Bunsen burners and chemicals and stuff. And my first experience of detention. I was a troubled child, problem child, whatever you want to call it. Throughout my whole time being at various schools, I was always getting into trouble, always pissing off my teachers, and always having letters sent home, or my parents being phoned up about stuff. My parents' evenings were always terrible. I would dread when parents' evening came along. That was the day when, the evening, where the parents would go up to the school. They talk, we'd talk to the individual teachers, to find out, what was going on, and, any concerns that the teachers had about you, and, saying, your kid's been really good, they're excelling at this. So you should really encourage them to do this. Or, in my case, your kid is really naughty. He's always, talking, and he doesn't do his work very often or very well. He's always, doing, misbehaving, acting out, doing stupid stuff, breaking the rules, and without fail, at the end of every parents' evening, my mother would be pissed as hell at me, and she'd be, shouting at me, giving me lectures for the rest of the night. And it was never, ever, ever a positive thing. So yeah, it got a little better towards the end of secondary school, but that was primarily because by that point I was doing things that I wanted to do, and I was finding things interesting. But still, I mean, I wasn't a great pupil in the academically or behaviourally. When I'd started secondary school, I'd been introduced to the special educational needs coordinator. She ran the special needs department. Her name was Mrs. Jones. She was a wonderful woman. I was always able to use the special needs department as a sort of safe space. I could go there, during my break times and in lessons when I particularly wanted to, and they gave me. Apparently my parents had spoken to her, and it had been said to them that I could have been statemented and received official, special needs status and whatnot, but they thought it would be a detriment to me, that I would be better served, getting more informal support from them. But I got a few support assistants in some of my classes. That happened quite randomly. Nothing had ever been said to me about it. There was just someone there who said, "Hi Chris, I'm a learning support assistant and I'm going to be helping you in your lessons." Secondary school was, even worse than primary school in terms of bullying and exclusion. I had a small group of friends. I was bullied a lot, some of it physical, and yeah. So you think it's a bad thing, and it says a lot about my life that really, when I get down to it, sometimes I think to myself, I wish I could wind back time and go back to school. So in some ways it was a bloody horrible experience, but I miss it almost. Having that structure in my life, always learning stuff and spending time in that place. I mean, everyone takes away something different from their school, and even though, like I said, I had some bad experiences there and I was bullied a fair amount, I've been for several interviews for jobs in IT departments at schools and stuff, and the interviewers, I've asked, why have you decided to go for a school? I decided to apply for a job at a school. What is it about schools that appeal to you as a workplace? And I remember, thinking about it, and I said to them, being at a school, I sort of feel safe and secure. It's one of the, it's an environment, that's deliberately intended to be nurturing and make you feel safe and give you structure in your life. And even if I'd never been to that school before, just being at a school evokes those feelings in me. And there's a beat. Can you please go away? Being in that sort of environment, it's weird. I mean, I don't know if I would describe it as enjoyable, but it's agreeable. I can remember, at the time when I was going to school, if I had to go back to school afterwards during the evening, whether it was for drama rehearsals or a drama production or for something that was going on, like something they would have open evenings for the school, and I used to help out in the science department because I was friendly with the head of the department, and I would do presentations and stuff because I was the computer whiz kid. And he used to get me to run the presentation software, add interactive games and demonstrations and videos and stuff, and he'd get me to run that. But I enjoyed at the time I enjoyed being at school when I wasn't supposed to be at school. Not during the school day per se, but if I was behind for a drama production or one of those open evenings or something like that, I liked being there. And it's probably a similar thing to when I went to those job interviews, that it feels like a positive environment, and I kind of want to go back to those days. I mean, if I woke up one morning and it was 2000 and I was was starting secondary school again. Sure, I would hate having gone back in time. Jesus Christ, I've lost everything. I've lost my computers. I've lost my car. I've lost all my online friends. Some of my online friends wouldn't even have been born, or would be babies and toddlers then. The things I enjoyed today, something that wouldn't even exist. But I would almost sort of, subconsciously relish the opportunity to redo school again. Now, I imagine that I would still have, my mind. I don't, because my brain would still be growing. I wouldn't know if I would have the same level of intellect or not, whether my brain would be capable of doing that. But I imagine I would probably do a bit better, because I'm already familiar with the subject material. I just need to be refreshed because I'd be rusty with it. But yeah, it's like it almost wouldn't be so bad. I know the people to avoid. I could try making different friends, and I'm a bit more confident now than I was then, so perhaps I wouldn't have so many problems. And there are things about myself that are different now, that probably would carry over if I went back in time and was 9 years old again. And the year 2000 was, I was 11 in year 2000. Or whatever it will be. I know I started secondary school when I was 9, and it was I left primary school when I was 9. My birthday was in the summer holidays, so I would have been... No, I was 10 in 99. I was 9. Yeah, I'm terrible. So, yeah, I remember. I know that I was part of the year 2000 intake group. Oh, yeah. Hang on. I have to think about this now. I finished up when I was 15, and I would have turned 16 that year. So. End of year 11, end of year 10, end of year 9, end of year 8, end of year 7. Okay, I was 10. I was 10 then. Yeah, it said I was the year 2000 intake group, but maybe that's like a car that came out in in October of 99 was a year 2000 model car. Yeah, okay, yeah. If that's the way it works, then that makes sense. But yeah, some of the problems I had then, either I don't have any more, or are more controlled. So perhaps my experience would be more positive. But yeah. It's something that I often imagine and dream about occasionally. Redoing secondary school. There's actually a H.P. Lovecraft story about this man. I can't remember what the story was called or what the man's name was, but he was a guy who'd been a soldier in World War One, and he'd had a near-death experience in a particular place during the war, and later on in life, it was the 1920s or I think it was the 1920s. He goes back to the family home that he grew up in, and the house is empty now because his parents are dead. And his car, he parks his car outside. He goes, he's there with intention. There was something that happened to him when he was a child up in the attic with something there, and it was always a source of great curiosity for him. And then one day he wakes up and thinks, I need to go to the attic, and I need to do something with this thing. So he drives over to the house. He gets out his car, goes up to the attic, and so I think it was a wardrobe. He steps into the wardrobe, and when he steps out of it again, he's a child. And he's gone, back in time, to the late 1800s, and a bit. The perspective of the story is from what was then the present day, which was the 1920s, and it said that there was at some point in his life when something changed, which was the point in his life where he'd started again effectively, where he'd gone back in time to a particular age, and his relatives said that age was when something happened. And he changed, and he became more intelligent and almost a different person. And when a town in Northern Europe was mentioned, he practically had a panic attack, and nobody knew why. But then later on, when he went to war, that was the town that he was almost killed in. And they thought that it was a strange coincidence that he'd reacted so strongly to the name of this place that he'd never been to before as a child, and then been nearly killed there as an adult. And then there's also the other sort of the parallel reality where that continues on when he went back in time. It's like it sort of diverged. So this is the point where he goes back in time. So he goes back, and this reality continues on without him. And then it's talked about, from the perspective of the people in that reality where he's disappeared. And it said that when he didn't return home one day, his servant went and looked for him. And eventually they found his car parked outside his parents' house, and the house was unlocked, but he was never seen again. It was like he disappeared. And that story had a particularly... At the time it didn't, but now thinking about it, that story has a particularly strong effect on me, because that sort of scenario is something that I found myself thinking about a lot. Something happening and me going back in time to be a child and redoing my life again. And it's, like I said, it's one of those situations where, you would hate it. You would hate going back in time and, losing the things that you have now, my car, my computer, my friends, the things I enjoy today that don't exist in the year 2000. And, yeah. It's I mean, it evokes strange feelings and emotions in me. It's like, I wouldn't want that to happen, but at the same time, I wouldn't necessarily, be completely abhorrent of it if it did. But, I might think to myself, oh, a fresh start. And I might relish the opportunity to be able to redo secondary school again. And yeah, it's an odd feeling, and it's something that I think about fairly often, to be frank. I don't know why, but yeah, maybe I'd start being a computer enthusiast earlier, and though I don't know how I'd be able to convince my parents to let me build a several £100 or £1,000 computer in those days. But I was barely able to convince my mother to let me do it in 2010, let alone being able to do it in the early 2000s. But it would certainly be an interesting experience. Knowing the things I know now, and going back in time to redo my life over. Ugh. Of course, there are certain things that I would never do because I'd already done them. Like I wouldn't. And just random, cursory throwaway example here. I wouldn't have necessarily bothered watching Star Trek Enterprise because I've already seen it all and know it all. The same with Star Trek Deep Space Nine and whatnot. So there are things that I would still be into and I would know about them, but nobody would know that I was into them because I'd never have done them in their experience. Like there'll be certain games that I wouldn't play because I'd already played them. Yeah. I always feel great thinking about this. Yeah, it would make a good story. Maybe something to, as a movie or television or something, but yeah. Well, if it ever miraculously happens, I'll find some way to make it known in a way that would not get me committed to a lunatic asylum. Yeah, that was something else that would be a problem. Is people would never believe you, and just like I've said before, if Jesus actually existed and he did return, nobody would believe him, and he would be carted off to a lunatic asylum. It's possible that if he did exist, that he has that the second coming has already occurred, but nobody believed him, and he was put into a lunatic asylum. Well, going back in time and redoing things is definitely food for thought. Yeah, and of course, with the things that you knew, like for example, September the 11th and the July 7th bombings in London, you would feel obligated to warn people, but they'd never believe. It's like you go to the police and say, you need to seriously step up security at the World Trade Center and various airports and on planes and stuff, because there is going to be a terrorist attack very soon on the World Trade Center. And there was we don't believe you. How do you know this information? Where does it come from? And it's just trust me. And then of course nobody would believe you, and then it would happen, and then you would be arrested. And people would say, how did you know? Were you involved with them? And people would assume that because you knew and couldn't prove how you knew, that you were somehow involved with it. Or you could be clairvoyant. Yeah. I managed to turn this into a pretty long video. It's over 40 minutes now. So I think it's probably best to end it here, especially considering I'm just about to finish my last cigar. You seeing it?